Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the podcast, Smart Man, Smarter Woman, a podcast for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs. And thank you again for giving us a listen today. I am Steve Lotz.
And I am Juliet Aurora.
And we are your co-hosts. And before we get to today's special guest, let's hear from my wonderful co-host herself, that smarter woman. How are you doing today, Juliet?
I'm well, thank you, Steve, for asking. I'm actually going through one of those roller coaster rides of being a business owner and an entrepreneur. So I'm really looking forward to our guest and our conversation today, because I'm hoping that I'm going to get this great insight as we are scaling our business and in the process of scaling our business of what our guest is going to be able to share with us, because that's one of his specialties. So I'm looking forward to all the insight that we're going to receive in today's conversation. So I'll turn it back to you so that we can get going.
Absolutely. Well, yes, I am also looking very forward to today's conversation with our special guest all the way from India. And this is the first time we have had a guest who's been located in India when we've been recording. So this is awesome. So Joseph Sudhip, thank you very much for joining us and welcome to the podcast.
My pleasure, Steve and Juliet. Thanks a lot for having me in today.
Our pleasure, Joseph. And so as we usually do, why don't we get started by perhaps if you could share a little bit about yourself, what you do, who you help, how you help them, and sort of how you got to where you are today.
All right, so let's get going. So I'm a business coach with a niche in business model designing. So I know it might be a little bit, on a 30,000 feet. So I will slowly get down get down. So before that, let me give a little bit of background of myself. So I was a professionally an accountant. I've done my CMA and an MBA, and I have 18 years of industry experience as a financial controller, director of finance, and CFO, and those kind of roles. And when I hit my 40s, everyone have this 40s syndrome, right? To keep going, crunching numbers or do something different. So I was looking like what else I could do other than crunch the numbers and give back a little bit more, because I got an amazing exposure from my age 26 to work with a $1 billion company and to be a financial controller of one of their unit and have this international exposure, flying around in global places. So that was like a real good exposure when you get in your early start of your careers. And then I really pitched up, to 40s when I really got where I need to be in accounting. So I thought, what else I could do? So that was where, when I was looking at what other opportunities I would be having, and I came up to this business coaching, where because all these years when you work as a CFO or a financial controller, you basically work with the CEOs. So for 18 years, I was working with CEOs of different levels, different countries, different, different cultures and all this. So I got a real hang of working with them. So I thought I would help them strategically align on a scale up their businesses. And I really focus on small and medium enterprises, because that is where really the help is required. Because for the biggies, you have this big force and big time consultants or whoever coming in to guide them. But in SME segment, there is a lot of vacuum. So I've been into this space and I've been playing around in almost 3 years in business coaching. And I found, and you need to find your niche, right? Because in business coaching is like a vast sea. You can have from leadership to each specifics. So I was thinking, where could I land myself in my niche? And I saw a huge gap in SMEs in business model designing, because all those are highly passionate entrepreneurs who have started with their own technical skills, but they reach a certain level, and beyond that, they are kind of stuck to go how to take it to the next level. There's a huge gap in SME segment, even if you look at globally. So that's where I thought where I should be giving back a lot. And that is where I come up with this business model designing, wherein I use around 14 different business canvases to really design a business model for them to scale up to the next level. So I think this is good for an intro.
Very good. Yeah, that was a lot of information, and anyone who listens to our show knows that we are huge believers in business coaches. We believe every business should have a business coach. We have had and worked with business coaches for probably the last 10 or 11 years now. But I have to admit, you are the first business coach I've met, certainly the first one on the show, who talks about designing the business model. Can you talk a little bit more about that? What do you mean by designing a business model?
Okay. So before I touch upon the word designing, let me explain what the business model is like. What is a business model? So business model is nothing but how an organization creates, captures, and delivers value. So creation, capturing, and delivery of value. It's three different pieces. And how we join together these different pieces in a business is basically a business model. And now that needs to be designed, because it's just not because people know, okay, how to create, but maybe they don't know how to deliver, or they don't know how to capture even after delivering it. So, and this is where SMEs lack, because they don't know the full piece, the 360-degree way of how to do these things in a very systematic, very professional way. So that is where I come to the design part. So how do I design a business model? So when you look at a business model, let's drill a business into three different parts. So one is what is your value proposition? Because every business need to have every client or customer of yours is basically hiring your product or services for a specific purpose, and that is what you mean by a value proposition. So what exactly is your value proposition, and how do you package your value proposition? Is it as a product? Is it as a service? Is it as a platform? So that is one part of it. And next comes, once you know your value proposition, it comes to the experience side. Who is it going to experience? Who is your customer segment? How does this customer segment know that you exist? So which means your communication part of it. What are the channels through which you are communicating? And how are you going to manage your customer relationship? That is how you get, keep, and grow your customers. And then your pricing. What is your revenue streams? What are your revenue streams? And what is the pricing models in each revenue streams? So all these come on the experience side in the sense, and a customer experiencing your value proposition. And I call it multipliers, these 6 canvases, because when you touch upon each of these 6 canvases, what happens is you are creating a way to increase your revenue. So you're multiplying your revenue when you touch upon these 6 canvases. So I talked about the first piece, which is the value proposition, and then the experience side. Now there is a third piece, which is called configuration, because you need to configure your product or services in such a way that value proposition is included, and it could be experienced by your customer segment. So what are the 6 aspects in the configuration side? You need to have your key partners or your key suppliers. You need to know who they are, how you build relationship with them, what are the key activities to run the show, who are your key resources to run this, what are your key assets, what is your cost structure, and what is the investment. So this is how you see a business on a 360-degree point of view. And no one sees like this. They miss 1 or 2. And that is where they see like a vacuum, or they're not able to roll it perfectly. And this is how I design or help design my clients a business model, because it touches upon any industry. It doesn't matter whether it's a service or whether it is a product. All these 14 canvases touches upon every industry on a 360-degree point of view.
Wow, there's a lot of information in there. Okay, so hopefully our audience was not driving as they're listening to this podcast or running, but are actually sitting somewhere that they can take some notes, or you're going to have to go back and slow it down a little bit. So can you tell us, in your experience with your clients, is there a pattern that you see where there's always, or most frequently, is the biggest gap? Out of all the areas that you talked about, do you see a pattern? Maybe it's a product business and they have a pattern versus a service business. But what is probably the most common gap that you see most businesses have?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. And the pattern is always biased on one side because they are damn good in configuring these things. The configuration parts, they are excellent because all these entrepreneurs would be from their technical background or they are passionate on something. So they do this part really well. What these guys really lack is on the experience side. They're not sure about their real customer segment. They don't know how to communicate their value proposition. They don't manage their customer relationship well. They don't fully utilize the potential of the business to see what are the revenue streams possible in their business. They look at one revenue stream and they think that's it. That's end of the story. It is not. With the technology and with all the things happening, they can have n number of innovative ways to design their revenue streams. And they're lacking it very badly.
Interesting that is so consistent. And I guess it makes sense because, as you said, so many entrepreneurs enter into the entrepreneurial space because they're good at something or they have an interest in something. And that's the technical side of the work, and sort of just expand their business by default. As they grow, they take on more customers, but aren't intentional about the customer experience. So do you find that as you work with businesses, and so, for example, we're looking to be scaling, that's our goal for 2021 is to scale. Do you find that as a business, so they've worked out, the create, the capture, the deliver, they've kind of, I guess, not perfected, because you never perfected, but they've fine-tuned the 3 different categories. If they are looking to scale, do you find that they have, team challenges? Do you help with them being able to transfer their knowledge as a technician so that they replace themselves? Is that a challenge that you see very often?
Yeah. So one is to have an idea about how their business model is going to be, and then it's a question of hand-holding them how to execute this to perfection. Because that is where my 18 years of experience comes in. Because when you are responsible for the figures of the company, you don't do just journal entries, right? You need to really understand the business and then be responsible for each department. So that is where the other side of it comes to me as a value addition, because I really understand the business well, and I can help them and handhold them how to execute the designed business model to perfection, or to the goal towards perfection.
Okay. And do you find that as you're designing this business model, I'm assuming that it's a collaborative effort with the business owner themselves, do you find that there are, starts and stops, or does it tend to follow this kind of linear path as you're going through this process?
This is again another interesting question, which again comes upon on the same pattern with the organizations, because this CEO or whoever is going need to take action, he is in a firefighting mode.
We will continue with our conversation right after this message from a friend of the show. AIS Solutions is an award-winning cloud accounting firm serving small businesses all across Canada. If you want to move your bookkeeping from the desktops of the dark ages to the cloud and get your financials wherever you are, whenever you want them, then contact AIS Solutions' team of trained professionals today at www.aissolutions.ca. And now, back to our conversation.
So when they are in a firefighting mode, what happens is they need to do many things, but they are operationally too much involved. And so after a certain point of time, they don't, because you need to dedicate some time. It's not like one guy, business coach, coming in and telling do this, do that. It needs to be really executed. So the question is how we could stop the current firefighting and then make him available for new thought process and new designs. So that is always a challenge.
Perfect. And I am going to, just because I am who I am, going to say he or she as the CEO and him or her as the technician or CEO as well.
I fully agree. It's just that it flows, whatever it flows, right?
Yeah.
And that's
Steve,
why
there's a lot of entrepreneurs in our audience, myself included, who are female leaders. And so I want to make sure we include them as well.
And that's why this show is called Smart Man, Smarter Woman, that there's a reason for the name of it.
Absolutely.
That's really great information. I guess if an entrepreneur or an entrepreneur want to be came to you for advice, they're thinking of starting a business, not really sure of first steps other than they know I'm passionate about this. This is what I want to do. What kind of advice would you give them sort of as a foundation to, I guess, improve their chances of being successful in their journey?
Sure. So if they have not started the business, that's a right time to, have a chat, because I've seen a lot, investing and losing it. So the first thing what I would tell them is, what is the value proposition? Have you really thought about what is the value proposition you are giving to your customer segment? Because most of the entrepreneurs, what happens is, they think there is a gap in the market, but they never look whether there is a market in that gap.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah.
So they are so ambitious. They are going to, take on the world with this gap, but they never business test it. It's all about assumptions, right? They think they assume. And only after they're putting their hard-earned money or, they finally understand, there is no market for that. So what are the assumptions on your value proposition? Do a business testing. Do a sample business testing and see whether your assumptions are correct or not. And then design a business model based on that. Because, even that like 90% of the startups fail. Why? It's because it's all assumptions. So it needs to be market tested. It needs to see what is the value proposition. And then comes the business model, which you design around it.
Very good advice. Absolutely. And I'm going to say 90%, I don't think we did any of that when we started. It was, okay, I think I need to do this. And okay, let's do it.
Yeah, I know.
I
think we had been in business a few years before we sat down and actually started to develop, okay, so what's our strategy to get from here to here, when you suddenly realize you're just not going any further. You keep running up against the wall. So that really is great advice. And as you said, if you can get that entrepreneur at the beginning, you may save them not only a lot of money, but a lot of time and grief by wasting energy. And it really is such a simple thing, but actually test your idea. Are there some people out there who will actually pay for this product or service, not just because you think they will? And it is amazing how many entrepreneurs we meet. And like say, as Juliet mentioned, we were certainly guilty of that ourselves. So I guess we can't point the finger anywhere else but in the mirror when we're looking there, that was absolutely us and could have saved us a lot of money and a lot of grief.
Well, I think more than anything else, it's being intentional and having, and not just jumping in with 2 feet, but actually thinking about what it is that you want to build. And obviously we've learned this over the last 10 or 11 years, but we've been in business for 20 years, didn't have any kind of strategy or intention for probably the first 10 years. And I think that's probably the biggest lesson that we got out of our coach was being intentional.
Yeah.
Nice. Very nice.
Yeah. And that's why everyone should have a coach, right? You need that.
And sorry, go ahead, Steve.
I was just going to say, you need that outside objective perspective, because one of the biggest challenges for an entrepreneur when they're in it, trying to just keep it going, trying to survive, just running from, place to place, it's very difficult to step back and objectively look at what you're doing and what you're not doing, which is where I think the tremendous value of a good coach.
Definitely.
For me to add on this perspective, any coach should be looking at three things. One is giving the entrepreneur a third-party perspective, which you rightly told now. Because they are in love with their product and they are always in the same thinking pattern. So if someone, it doesn't need to be like a glorified name called coach, but you need to have someone to give the third-party perspective. Second is he needs an accountability partner, because when he runs the show, he's not accountable to anyone. So he just keep running the show, firefighting and whatever. So he needs an accountability partner. That is where the coach comes in. And third is, which I specifically do, I don't see much coaches doing it, analyze the pattern within the organization. Because from the start, they knowingly or unknowingly would be following a pattern, because you're 10 years or 20 years in the business, right? You would be having a pattern which might be good for your organization or might not be good for the organization. And you for sure cannot see that because it's a pattern.
Right.
It's only a third person who comes in and see, why? Oh, this is a strange pattern which I see. And are you aware of this? Do you really know that it is good for your business? So these are the three areas which I really focus on when I help businesses.
Yeah. No, that's terrific. Those are three very, very critical points. And I think also when, you talk a little bit about pattern, that sometimes it's also the pattern got you to here, but unless you change that pattern, it will never get you over here. And as you said, you become entrenched in it. Because for most entrepreneurs also, their business is so personal, right? It's like one of their children. So it becomes very, very difficult to view that child objectively, particularly because you've had a large part in creating it. And then to admit to yourself, okay, I haven't created a perfect child. And if I want this child to continue to grow, I need to nurture it, help it change some things so it can maybe develop a new pattern. So I think that was tremendous advice. Thank you for that.
And just as a complete total side note, Steve, you do know that this is a podcast, right? So as you're doing all the hand gestures of from here to there, nobody can really see it. They can just hear it.
I appreciate that, Juliet. I'm trying to help them visualize,
okay.
and I feel if I move, it's helping them to, maybe they can hear the air moving as I move. I don't know, but thank you. That was a very good observation. I've been speaking with my hands for as long as I remember. I don't think it's going to change now. That was great. I'd also like to touch a little bit, Joseph. You have a podcast. Tell us a little bit about your podcast and who's your audience and what are you trying to accomplish with it?
All right. So my podcast name is Business in 90 Seconds. So my intention of starting this podcast was, maybe I should tell, two intentions. So one was make it as crisp as possible so that in 90 seconds, I need to convey a message which should go really into heart of the people so that because people doesn't have time, right? So 90 seconds, one concept, boom, end of the story. Now, second is, and it's all relating to business, either on the leadership side or management side. I don't specifically try to sell that business model design in that, but it's all on a general areas on that. The second is, I started it on my 43rd birthday. So it was kind of a resolution towards myself to do something new and to do a podcast every week or every once a week. So now I'm on my 27th episode. So because it's again it's again challenging myself, because many times I had thought to leave that out, but I remembered, okay, this is my resolution. I need to get this going. So, and it helps me in many other aspects to get things going for myself. So even I would advise everyone to start something like this, not podcast or something, on a weekly basis, which you have not done at all, because I have never been in front of a camera or done anything of that sort. So when I look from my first episode to 27th episode, I can see the kind of change and kind of improvement. So it's just a self-development, part two inside this.
So is your podcast 90 seconds?
Yeah, I try to keep between 90 to 120 seconds. It's maximum.
Wow. Steve, that would give you like nothing to talk about in 90 seconds.
I wouldn't even be done my introduction. I don't know how you do that. But that's great, right? I mean, it is really, that's what people like today. I mean, whether we like it or not, they like those little sound bites, but those nuggets of great information that I can just grab quickly and then move on to the next thing. So I think, Joseph, you may be onto something there, that may be a winning formula you have going. And I congratulate you on stepping out of your comfort zone, as you say, and sticking with it, because it is difficult for all human beings to step out of their comfort zone. But as they say, right, the only way we grow is when we step outside of our comfort zone. So again, congratulations. That's fantastic. I'd like to come back a little bit to and talk maybe a little bit about when you made the decision to leave the corporate world and start out on your own. That's a big decision, right? I mean, that's very, very different from the corporate world. Is there anything you wish you had known then when you made that decision that you know now?
Very interesting question. To start with, like when you leave the corporate world, you exactly know what to do because you have 18 years of experience with you. And now you are again stepping out of your comfort zone. So I did this for two reasons. One is, I wanted to make sure I wanted flexibility in my life because I wanted to take care of my aged parents. So I wanted to keep flying between Canada and India. So that was one reason. Plus, I wanted to give back because I had a tremendous exposure of 18 years, which I don't think in 40s anyone else would have had. So there were two aspects to it. And then when you move out of that comfort zone, all what you could gather is whatever you see in YouTube or anything about business coaching and all those. So you think, okay, this is what it is, right? And then you gradually step into that there, and then you see the reality. So when you come to the reality, there are a lot of business coaches in this world, and everyone is a business coach. And with whatever, like 15 years of experience, they call themselves a business coach. So it's a different world altogether. So you need to find your unique niche. That was the first learning which I understood, because you need to find your place. Everyone has a space in this market, but you need to find your space. For that, you need so much of reflection on yourself, like what is that you are good at. So I had to really look at my reflection of 18 years. So wherein I remembered one of the sentences from my super boss in one of my companies, that you are a natural HR. Even though, because I was in one organization, they gave me a responsibility of director of finance and human resources, even though I was a finance guy. And I was able to do something good. I don't know what I did, but but they were like really, it was really difficult for them to manage that show, and it came like natural to me. So I remember he telling like, you have a natural HR inside you. So I had to reflect even like 10 or 12 years back to find out where are the good points inside me to become a good coach. And then I figured out I was really gelling well with CEOs or whoever runs the business, because all these years I was working closely with them. So that plus the natural HR element in me, plus this 18 years of experience of running the businesses along with the CEOs, with all these I was able to find like my niche, wherein helping SMEs, helping CEOs or entrepreneurs on business model designing. So it was like it was a journey. It was not an easy task to come up to the where I am now. And I'm not like a guy who just settles down somewhere, because I always want to get out of my comfort zone again and again, basically to see how else I could give value to my clients. So now I'm focusing on, from business model designing, a little bit more deep into revenue model designing, because in the entire business model, where the real catch is on the revenue models. So how can I help entrepreneurs innovate new business models? Because the technology is changing very rapidly, and there is huge opportunity in revenue model designing in every aspect. But entrepreneurs, once they are in their own well, they are not able to see that bigger picture. But when I am like free bird, keep learning, keep understanding what is happening outside, I can really help them once I understand their business. What are the revenue models you can add? How can you add more revenue streams in your existing business? And that is where the valuation comes in for a business, right? If you have one business model, one revenue model, and that is the only model, it can get outdated due to technology in any time. So you need to keep innovating newer revenue models to have your business sustain. Plus, you need to be upfront in your valuation game. So this is where my focus is on currently.
That's great advice. That is a mistake, again, that we see far too often, where a lot of businesses are stuck with one revenue model. That's the way we've always done it. So that's the way we're going to keep doing it. And to heck with the rest of the world. Here's what we're going to do. And you're absolutely right. There's some great examples, Blockbuster Video and Kodak, and there's quite a few very famous examples who didn't adjust themselves. That brings us to that part of the show, one of our favorite parts of the show, at least my favorite part of the show anyway. And that is the Smart Man, Smarter Woman version of James Lipton's Actors Studio, where we ask every one of our guests 6 questions, the same 6 questions to every guest. And if you are ready, Joseph, we would like to begin.
Let's fire it.
Perfect. What one word best defines an entrepreneur?
Flexibility.
What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Sales.
What profession would you like never to attempt?
Operations.
Okay. What sound or noise do you love?
Humming of birds.
What book would you recommend every entrepreneur should read?
The Dream Giver.
Okay. When your own entrepreneurial journey is completed, what do you hope your legacy is?
To have a signature of my own, of giving back to the society.
Excellent, excellent. And for those in our audience that would like to connect with you, Joseph, what is the easiest way for them to do that?
Yeah, you can have in my LinkedIn, you can visit my LinkedIn, wherein all my episodes of Business in 90 Seconds are there, because it's a short ones. I have my website called thebusinessmodelcoach.com. And if you want to have email me, it is joseph@smartnumbers.ca, just to remember my number crunching periods.
Perfect. And we will make sure that all of the contact information is in the show notes so people can see it there. And the correct spelling of Joseph's name, if you want to connect with him on LinkedIn, Joseph, Joseph, and the last name, Sudhip, Sud, as in Donald, HIP. Joseph, do you have any final thoughts for our audience as we conclude this episode?
Yeah, I'm really passionate on, because I know the kind of hard work which every entrepreneur puts in to build their business. What my advice to everyone is, think of the revenue model side, revenue model canvas, because technology is giving immense potential for you to have different revenue models. I can give you one example just to share you how important it is. I had a client of mine who was into this health supplement manufacturing company, and he was a small SME player. And he was not able to, didn't have that cash muscle power to do that much kind of advertisements to kind of match up with these bigger players in this market. But this is when we had this brainstorming session. And I can tell you an example of how he was able to come up. Because all the time he was thinking was, okay, he have a product and he need to sell the product. He need to sell this health supplement product. So we had a couple of brainstorming sessions and told, okay, you have a product. You always thinking of product selling. Now let's come out of this well and look at concept selling. Let's see your business as a concept. So how do you build that concept? Now he has this health supplement company, and with this pandemic, these health supplements and immunity boosters are in huge demand. So, and why not? People keep giving gifts, right? And when they give gifts, they give sugar or cakes and chocolates and all this, which is again white poison. So instead of gifting white poison, why not you gift these immunity boosters? Why not you gift these health supplements? So instead of product selling, we started looking at concept selling. And that is where you can look at this site, where iyourgifts.com, wherein you gift your employees. The employer can gift their employees these health supplements. Or you can gift your friends. You can gift your parents. So this is where you can, innovatively bring in additional revenue models with concept selling rather than product selling. I was just giving you one example because there is a possibility for bringing in additional revenue model. It's just that you need to brainstorm. So find the right person to have this brainstorm, and there is a possibility. That is my only advice to you all guys.
Excellent advice. And what about you, Juliet? Do you have any final words before we close down the episode?
I guess the only thing I'd like to say is there's been a ton of advice that we've talked about and new ideas that we've talked about. And one of the things that we said early on in the episode was, to have this conversation when you start or before you start your business. And I just want to reinforce for those of you that are further along in your journey, you can absolutely still make a pivot. As I said, we were in business for 10 years before we started being intentional about it. So never think that it's too late, that you can't change something or start something new. There are, what is the saying that yesterday was probably the best time to do it, but today is the second best time to do it. So don't feel like and I probably massacred that quote completely.
No, it was pretty close. It was pretty close.
But don't feel like it's too late and that you can't change your business.
Okay. Thank you, Juliet. That was great. And for this episode's words of wisdom, only those who will risk going too far can possibly find out how far they can go. T.S. Eliot.
Excellent.
So, thank you to our guest, Joseph. Fantastic. Lots of great information for our audience. So thank you. Thank you to my awesome co-host, Juliet. Can't do this without you. But most importantly, thank you to you, our audience, again, for tuning in and giving us a listen. We hope you found some value. And if you did, we'd love it if you subscribed. We are in all of the regular places, iTunes, Spotify, or you can go to the website, smartmansmarterwoman.com. So thank you. Until next time, take good care of yourself and those that you love. Bye for now.